Well, let's try this out. Let's see what we're...
Yeah. You know, nobody's undefeated. Unless you're Khabib.
True.
It smells like root beer. Kind of. Okay. I mean, it's got spice. They added spice to it.
We definitely put like spices in it.
Yeah. I wonder if they actually like age it in oak at all.
I wonder what that would do if you did that. So I think
it's pretty flat. Like it doesn't.
It comes down to like the Emmett and I were talking about. They have to be made to just mix. The sipping side, I haven't found one that you can sip.
It tastes like a flat soda.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of like you went to the carbonation ran out in the fountain machine, and you're like, well,
and you're just getting some syrup and then a little bit of spiciness, and I mean it's drinkable.
Yeah, it's not horrific. It's there.
I'll finish the bottle before we leave.
Challenge accepted. So have you ever had NA stuff before?
No.
Not beers? None of...
I mean, I had NA beers, yeah, when I was like 12. But, no, I not really. Actually, that's not true. I have some NA IPAs in the fridge right now. Just, those can get pretty heavy pretty quick, so I'll swap one in and keep drinking a beer.
So that's your water? You're like, hey, get my water.
Just, 7%ers, man. They'll catch up to you pretty quick. So I'll just have one of those where I can keep drinking and socializing. And in social settings, I tend to drink a lot. Yeah. So I'll mix in NA IPAs and stuff there. Yeah. And those actually are pretty on point on taste for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that I had O'Doul's yesterday during the football game, NA, and I was like, that's pretty solid. I was like, it's not bad. So.
It is. There's a blast from the past. That's the one my dad would give me as a 13-year-old so I can drink a beer with dad.
Yeah, you want a beer, son? You're like, yeah. And you're like, well, it's not alcoholic. But
yeah, well, whatever. It was a beer to me.
Right? Well, it's weird. I was telling him the first time I did an NA beer, when I drank it, you still got like that relaxed vibe of like, hey, we're chilling out in the summer, having a beer. But obviously no long-term effect. So, but yeah, this is Free Spirits. They actually sent us, we all have been seeing on the shelf down here, their entire line, which is really nice of them because they're not cheap bottles. I would say overall, out of any of the bourbons we've had, this is the best one. There's plenty of other stuff we're going to try. That tequila, I'm hoping, will make a margarita taste good. That's NA because I'm obsessed with margaritas, or bourbon. Like, that's my two go-to things. But
I mean, yeah, this is good. I would pour it again and drink some more.
Perfect. So at some point, you'll hear the cork pop and pour some more. But so if you haven't picked up, you're on the podcast, Do You Even Fail? I'm really excited for today's episode. So I've known Matt Kanaskie. He's one of the first guests we've had on. I've known for years. Let's see, 7, 8 years I've known.
Yeah, you didn't meet me at a coffee shop.
No, didn't meet him at a coffee shop. I used to actually work for Matt back when I worked at Marco, which was 2 years ago was the last time I was there, and I worked there for almost 5 years. He was running the whole sales team when I left there, so I had many fun conversations behind closed doors on helping me figure out how to scale my division and work with my team, and a lot of smart-ass comments along the way. Definitely is what he's known for, and we're going to try and keep him in his seat. He likes to stand up and pace, but he knows today he can't do that. But give him a little background. You're on to new, bigger, better things right now. Probably both personally and professionally. So kind of give him a little recap of who Matt is.
Yeah. I have been in technology sales nearly 20 years. So I got started doing this field sales thing at, just above 20 years old. So, been after it for a while and really have touched every revenue producing role, whether it's a direct seller or a sales engineer, a sales manager, a partner manager, a director, VP of sales, a solution leader, a product manager, whatever touched revenue in some way that we could sell more of our product, I was into it, whether it was purely sales or technical or operational, any of the above. So that's kind of all different roles over the past 20 years doing that. I recently moved over to a new organization called Cyber Advisors, and that was really just a decision to kind of do it all over again, to rebuild again, and was kind of standing at the top of the mountain and looking back at a lot of the things we had accomplished and wondered if I could do it again with a different set of variables, and wanted to just try again to see, was it some of the circumstance? Was it luck? Was it just a coincidence of right time, right place? Or was it me? Right. And so I wanted to make sure and go try it to see if it was me.
So what are you finding out right now? It's a year, because you're almost a year in, aren't you?
Yeah, almost a year in. Yeah. And so we just turned over a new year, right? So in 2024 is kind of the first real full year of implementing strategies and plans and goals that I have myself. So a lot of change here. We just had our first sales kickoff, and I implemented a multitude of changes to the organization. So I think everybody's in a little bit of shock, but mostly excited. And it's been great. It's been really interesting to look at, kind of subjectively come in and assess a business and sit back and look at what they've done. I mean, they've been in business 25 years, so they're not new. But to take in everything they've done and truly understand who they are, how they got there, what's their brand, why were they successful, and then weave that into the next layer of strategy, which is rapid growth. And in the short time I've been there, we've almost doubled our employee count. And so they're going to experience something they've never experienced as an organization, right? And even with 25 years in business, they haven't been through that. So it's been really exciting to connect with my skill set, my knowledge, and my background of like, oh, been there, done that. I know how this story plays out, and then apply that and do it again. And it's like, if I could do it all over again, what would I do different? What would I do better? Right? I'm getting a chance to try those things now and really stand up on my own and try it, see if it's right.
So what would you say you did wrong last time that you're doing different this time?
And yeah, I don't know if it was so much I or we, or maybe, some things were just so large that you didn't have an opportunity to fix something before it got so big, right? And so the big opportunity here is like, oh, I could fix this now when we have like 8 sellers and not 200. It's a lot harder to change a trajectory, whether it be a compensation plan or a product or go-to-market strategy, adoption of a tool. Any of that is infinitely harder with 200 contributors than sub 10, right? And so there are things that I really, really, really wanted to do in my previous role that just really weren't feasible, whether it was financially, logistically, or we just knew they were going to fail at scale. That now I could be like, well, let's just try it. Let's just try it. Let's just wing it. Let's just do it. Let's buy the thing and go all in. Like specifically something that I was after was like sales enablement, right? And the digital transformation of sales, and trying to implement that 20 years into your sales journey with a large group of people where you're going to have 70% that don't adopt. That's a pretty petrifying investment for an organization of that scale. Where, if there's like 6 or 8 of us, I can make you do it and we can do it together and I can like actively participate with the sellers. So I don't know if we did anything wrong. There was just some things that were prohibitive at that scale.
So I have a question on this being prohibited, because right now, so I work at Dell, right? So just, massive org, and I'm on the strategy side. And so we're always looking at how do we go to market more efficiently? What new product line should we sell? How do we just drive revenue, right? At the base of it. And it always comes down to great idea, not practical for our size. Great idea, too many people, right? And I think there's a tipping point, right? Dell's a whole new beast. I mean, when you're trying to get 15,000 people to change a mindset, it's a lot harder than even 1,000 or 200 or whatever. But at some point, then you have to accept you will become extinct or swallowed if you don't, make that pivot. So in an organization of Marco size where you have 200-300 sales reps, how does leadership weigh, will this kill us in the long term, but we'll survive in the short term, versus, hey, let's die in the short term, but survive in the long term?
So you run through all these scenarios, right? Do we do a pilot group, or do we just do a certain market, or do we do a certain customer segment? And largely those are the ideas that prevail. You end up chopping up a little piece and going, let's trial it there. And then if we can build a success story and show data, then when we force adoption at a greater scale, we can always point to something to fall back and go, no, it works. I promise. I can show you it works. So usually you carve it out into a smaller group. And in that smaller group, if you have success and you're aware of there might be variables contributing to that success. Sometimes it was successful because it was a small pilot. But if you put it at grand scale, things change. So you gotta kind of be fully aware that those variables can change the outcome, and then try to the best of your knowledge, roll the dice on, okay, if we took this science experiment and we expanded it at scale, what variables could break that down? Like, sure, that worked, but that market loves in-person meetings and this market doesn't, so it won't work in the next market. Same idea, same exact concept. I have data to prove it'll work. But honestly, until you just go out and try and just make people do it, including yourself, right? I think that's a big part of it, is like, just go do it yourself. Just be vulnerable. Don't be scared to fail. Just go do it and fail with them, right? So I think we would always weigh that out. And then it was like, how much work is this? Are we going to be talking about this for a year? Can I get this thing off the ground in like a month and get results in like 2 months? Or is this a long play where we'll be analyzing data on a BI dashboard for a year until we have any real trend that tells us if it's successful or not? And I think that one's a lot more challenging. A lot of the things that we did at scale, we didn't really know if it was successful until like 9 months later. And that's really hard to hold back payroll decisions or staffing decisions or compensation decisions for nearly a year just to see if it worked.
So what's the play to become more agile, or do you just have to accept that you will become extinct as you get bigger? Like, it's just the inevitable end as you die off because you're too big to be agile.
And well, and there's the counter thought that some things are too big to fail.
Yeah.
So the market will just allow you the opportunity to catch up because of your brand recognition or because of your size. They don't want you to fail. So people will hang on and wait for Dell to figure it out and maybe not adopt the cool new thing that one of their competitors is doing. But I do think that businesses should always have some incubator group for research and development, for science experiments, for trials, for off-the-wall things to break through, and just give them the freedom and autonomy to try it. There's always willing employees that are going to raise their hand and say, I want to be the one to try it. I'm the one that's willing to try the new thing. And just seek those people out in your organization, keep them close to you, and feed them. Feed them things to do, feed them opportunities to break stuff, and tell them it's okay.
Yeah, you're like,
I
good
knew it
job,
was
you
gonna
broke
break.
it.
Yeah.
Good. Like, we have
Yeah.
something to work on. Yeah, more companies, in my opinion, need to adopt that, because I think too big to fail is something big organizations tell themselves to feel good. And a great example is Sears, right? Sears was basically Amazon before Amazon. They had the massive catalog. They shipped everything. They carried everything. They were the beast, the juggernaut, and they did end up dying out, right? Versus if you look at Microsoft, what I find interesting about them, I knew they're innovative and drove forward, but now that I'm really in the tech space, to keep pace or even try and keep up with them is like sprinting an ultra marathon. Like, those guys are always just burning money, sending people out into the abyss. And they're like, yeah, go see if that'll work. Yeah, and here's a couple million, just go, right? Or Amazon survives because they're like, hey, 6-page paper, tell me why I should do it. I don't need 40 people researching it for, 6 months. That cost me, $500,000 or a couple $1 million just to figure out if it's a good idea. So those incubators are smart. But in the incubator world, you still things are going to mess up. You're going to break things, like you said, right? So we're here to hear just failures in your life and what you broke.
And also, I should say, like, you have to have an executive sponsor. You got to have someone in the executive team willing to stand up and say, we're going to try it. We may fail. It's okay. Give us the grace to do it. Like, let us go out there and break it. And someone's got to be strong enough on that team to take that stance and defend their team. I've seen that break down in the executive room numerous times where they may believe it's a good idea or they want to empower and enable people, but they're not willing to hold their ground and defend their turf, even if your job's on the line. So right? If you care enough, then like, if it doesn't work, fire me.
So I would ask, let's unpack that more, because I would say you were one of few people I met who would actually, Matt would literally just stay in a room and be like, you're all idiots. We need to do this. Like, let's trust this person to go run and do this thing. And then you would say, blame me. So how did you get to that mentality that you were okay with that? And if you had to poke someone in the eye that isn't, why do you think they aren't okay with taking that position?
I think I got there because it was me, right? I was the one that got tapped in to go try the new thing or go break it or go push the new process. So, like, it's me giving back now to, like, there's more people like this. There's another generation. I got to seek them out, keep them close to me, and let them go break through something, right? So that, I think, honestly, is just a personal assimilation of where I look for people that have that same drive, and they're just willing to try. They're willing to put in the effort. If I go get something approved, I know they're going to put in the effort so that if we fail, I know they at least tried their hardest. And I don't have to go like, well, did you really do it? Did you really log in? We did a pilot of like a sales enablement tool that sales was clamoring they must have, and they would be so much more effective and they could get so many more leads if we did this thing. Okay, so we went out, we got it sponsored, we got the trial group. We had like less than 50% even log in.
Okay.
The pilot group, like, talk about, okay, so embarrassing failure, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm, in the exec team going, this is going to work. We're going to do it. We need to adopt these tools. We're going to take over sales. We're going to, like, set so many meetings and get so many clients, right? And, like, we didn't even use it in the proof of concept.
Well,
right?
that's a faceplant.
So, okay, so that's not going to work. I guess we're not going to buy that this year. Yep, confirmed. But, a couple things happened from that, right? One of those users, the power user who actually proved it out, he was far and away the most disappointed that we didn't get the investment, because he could actually prove, like, I closed these 5, not got leads. I closed these 5 deals from this tool and this process. He cared so much about it. He broke out, started his own business, and he does like sales enablement and sales content development as his business now, and has been an entrepreneur now for 5-6 years. He sold a couple companies, and it spawned from that thing, right? From that first engagement. So that's really fun and validating to see that happen. And that's adjacent success, but it's still awesome to see. We stay in touch now. I still hang out with him. We do some podcasts every now and then. So that was a fun story. Sorry, I talked a lot. What was the second part of that?
Second part is why, if you had to poke back at people who won't stand up and take that, why do you think they don't?
I think there's a bit of courage. There's a bit of, you have to be really confident in yourself to know that if we fail, or even if, like, my job was on the line, my stability, my income, so what? I believe in myself. I'll go get another job. I'll find another opportunity. I'll do it somewhere else, and maybe they'll enable me to do it. So you have to have a lot of confidence in yourself and your own skills to be able to stand up and believe adamantly that that is right, and you believe it's going to succeed, and you're going to be relentless in the pursuit of that success. I don't know that there's a lot of people that are that self-confident, and maybe correctly or incorrectly, it doesn't really matter, right? If you're in sales, you need to be confident at all costs. Our job is to run through brick walls all day, right? So you're either like really dumb or really smart. Either way, you knock the wall down, you win. It doesn't actually matter how you knock the wall down.
Right. So I'm in the same boat in self-confidence, right? At some point you're like, hey, I'll just get a new job. I'm okay. Like, you're not my end all be all. You're not my lifeline, right? But a lot of people would tie that back to arrogance, or say, hey, you have a chip on your shoulder. You have something you're trying to prove. So you personally, you've talked a lot about resilience, drive, going against mainstream, wanting to break things. Does that stem from childhood? Did you get bullied? Your parents ride you really hard? Like, what's the seed that caused Matt to have that type of personality?
That's a good question. No, I didn't really get bullied. Actually, I was the one, like, if I saw bullying, that's when I would attack. That drives me nuts. I don't like that when it's unfair to people. But I think, like, anything that I needed or wanted, I had to go get, and it could have been given to me. I didn't have hard times growing up or anything like that, but I also wasn't, like, really given anything, right? And so I went to a private high school. Kids had really nice cars and stuff in high school, and I had a $300 car that I bought myself from a garage sale. Like, and
what was the car?
It was an '81 Chevy Malibu. It was 2-tone, and
Love it.
yeah, it was great. It didn't even have, like, roll down windows in the back. You could not put the windows down in the back.
Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe it was like a police car or something, but I don't know. But it was $300, and that was $300 that I bought it myself. And I think just starting from there, like, having to, my first job was a bike. I had to get a bike, ride a bike, go to work. Now this is like 15, right? But after that, then it's like, well, then I have to get a car. And it was just, I kept leveling up and leveling up and leveling up. And so I think a lot of just, like, what I did myself now, I look at many employees I work with, and it's like, well, I know what I went through to get here. Like, you can definitely work harder. You could definitely try harder. You can put more effort in than you're doing now. So I think there was plenty of opportunities to quit or give up or say this is too hard or unfair or whatever. And you just work through it. You just work through it. Like I drove around for years in South Florida with a car with no air conditioning, wearing a suit every day, showing up sweaty. So like what do? I just brought wet towels in a cooler, and that was my solve, right? Like, so just like you wipe your face down before you go to the meeting so you're not sweating. And I couldn't afford air conditioning, but I could afford that.
That's smart. So walk me through a major moment where you wanted to quit and you didn't. Like, where did you find the grit and what was the moment?
So I've never really been that good at cold calling, prospecting. And when I started my sales career, like telemarketing was like, that's how you do it, you know? And so when I first started off, I'm like, man, this can't be like, I just sit here and call people all day and hope that I can get meetings with them. And yeah, 200 times a day, you do that.
Smile and dial.
Yeah. And, but then like I applied data to it. Right. And this is before like even we had any CRM or anything. This was a sheet of paper with boxes on it that, you know, one strike was I got to the gatekeeper, an X meant I got to the decision maker, and a circle meant I got the meeting. And I would just log every call, you know, across the sheet as I was doing it. Well, at the end of the day, that left me with data. Okay, after 200 calls, I was successful this many times. I got to the gatekeeper this many times. And then I applied like what I say to the conversion ratio. So I was like, if I say these words, I get a 12% return. But if I say these words, I get an 18% return. And something that I really wasn't perceivably that good at when I started, I got really good at by just leveraging data and keeping track of what I'm doing and being self-aware and self-assessing, right? You have to track what you're doing to get any kind of meaningful improvement. So when I wasn't tracking anything, I'm like, this just sucks. No one answers the phone. Nobody wants to meet with me. They don't care about what we have. Our product sucks. We can't sell anything. Whatever. Give all the excuses you want. Until I really like started keeping track. I don't know who in my career put that sheet of paper in front of me, but thank you, whoever that was. That worked tremendously. Yeah. Actually, I think it was Jack Sawyer. So Jack, you know, if you listen to this, thank you.
We'll find you, Jack.
And he said, you know, actually write this down when you make the calls. And that was a turning point where I started analyzing the sheet at the end of the day. And that I started looking forward to that. There was no like, oh, I got said no to so many times, or I can't believe this. I didn't even care what happened on the calls. I was just trying to get to the data. I literally like disconnected all the emotion from the cold calling and was like, can I get 12% to 18%? Ended up landing on like a really good pitch. It ended up becoming like a marketing slogan. We made marketing flyers around it. It became a whole marketing movement or campaign in the company purely from that cold call. And so that was the turning point. Really was measuring and being self-aware and like keeping track of what I actually do instead of just going and doing it every day.
Yeah, it's you hear a lot of like self-help coaches that talk about gamifying stuff, right? And it sounds like that's what you did.
Oh,
like,
that
how do
worked for
I
me great.
not focus on what sucks and make it fun? And I always tell people, I was like, life just comes down to numbers. I don't care if it's a relationship with your spouse, with your dog, you know, groceries, like everything's just numbers in the end. If you take time to create the data inside of conversations, like if you fight with your wife a lot, track every time you fight. What happened? What was said? How did you get there? Again, data, numbers. In the end, it solves everything.
And you asked like, well, I mean, like I played a lot of video games coming up as a kid, right?
What was
so
your favorite?
Gamifying everything is like Twisted Metal. Man, I loved Twisted Metal.
Okay, what is Twisted Metal?
It was like basically a mix between racing and carnage and fighting and shooting, and you had a car and you could like basically destroy all the other cars to win the level.
I'm picturing that movie.
They did make a movie.
Okay,
about it.
okay,
Yeah,
got
did.
it.
I think you're thinking of Death Race.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
But they did make a Twisted Metal movie as well. But
Oh.
that was definitely one of my favorite games, and because I've always been into automotive or automobiles and cars and things like that, and then it was like a mix of like rockets and machine guns and all that, and destruction and carnage. So I just loved that game. But you know, the point of gamifying like that 100% works for me. Maybe not everyone, but There's a generation here that grew up through Nintendo on all the way up until, our Xbox One X, where we're at now. There's many generations of gaming systems there that's kind of like ingrained in a whole, what I want to say, generation of people that I think that can really resonate in the business world is gamifying tasks. You see CRMs do it, and they're starting to add gamification and scoring.
Yeah,
and
weight loss
progressing.
does it. Like everyone now is in that
Yeah,
space.
so I think I definitely connect with that. I don't know why I need to have 100 tokens, but I have to have them.
Yeah, it feels right. Okay,
Yeah.
do you get anything for it? Nope, but
No,
I feel
nothing
good.
at all. Nobody even knows.
Yeah, no one knows, just me and my phone. So I think what's interesting, you talked earlier about, hey, I know how hard I worked, and so I know these people can work harder. And right away I was going to jump on that, and I'm glad I didn't, because then you also talked about in your past, you hated said activity. You probably weren't working as hard as you could until you figured out how to make it gamified, so you would enjoy the activity, and then you started working harder. So would you say it's a generational thing, or do you think that's every generation has a mass group of people who just don't want to grind, and you
No,
have
I
to
think,
incentivize them properly?
I think you always start with hard work. Everybody says, work smarter, not harder, but you don't know how to work smarter until you figure out how to get smarter. So I worked harder first, figured out how to get smarter, then I started working smarter. And so how that actually manifested, right, is there would be an 8-hour day that I would sit there and make my 200 calls to get through that grid. And we had a rule that either you made 200 calls or you set 6 meetings, and that was your task of the day, right? Well, when I got this pitch down, when I got better, I was setting 10 meetings by lunchtime and then leaving. So I was now working half days. So much so that the CEO of the company got really mad and went to the sales leader and goes why is this guy never here? And he's like, well, he has 11 meetings. He's done. He's more than done. And that was at a time where it's no, you have to be here and working and at your desk and all that. And that was the first challenge of well, did you want me to complete the task or just work 8 hours? Right. And that was kind of my first exposure to that concept, which now has manifested in the last 5 years as a big deal. But that was 20 years ago. Right. And ultimately I had to prove out why I didn't need to be there the second half of the day, because I actually had sales calls to go to. I actually had so many meetings. What do you think I'm doing for the other 4 days, right? And if you didn't set enough meetings, you had to do it Thursday too. So it was Monday and Thursdays were your prospecting days. But if you could set enough meetings, I wouldn't even show up Thursday to prospect because I was on meetings. I thought that was the purpose of why we were doing this. So to just wrap it back, right? It started off with working harder, but then I learned how to work smarter, and then I just stayed in that smarter space. But I didn't know how to just work smarter because someone said work smarter. I had to learn how to get smarter.
So do you think too many people are trying to jump from job to smart in that whole working hard phase? They just don't want anything to do with it?
I think there's a bit of that there's so much commentary around, work smarter, not harder. You're a fool to work hard, right? Haven't you figured out how to use AI to automate all of those things, right? Which, of course, I am playing with AI all the time and trying to find ways to work smarter and be more efficient. But, if you didn't know how to do it in the first place,
the tool
what
is
can
useless.
you automate?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've been a part of many automation projects and we are going to take this process and make it far more efficient. We're going to automate everything. But you're starting at a foundation that doesn't even work today. Right. So we need to actually put the hard work into making an efficient process, then start cutting out steps and make it faster. And so I think there is some of that skipping the whole roll your sleeves up, dig in, and actually fix the problem first, then get faster, better, stronger.
Right. The way I look at it, a simple concept is, 1.0 podcast studio, it's what we have today. First origination was oh, it's cool. And then it was we thought we were crushing. And you're well, people are we'll use this tool and use this lighting. What about this camera? What about these angles? You're holy crap. And by the end, you're wow, that was really inefficient and embarrassing where we started. But then by the end, you're oh, this is great. But I wouldn't know how to apply any of said tools if I didn't at least start building out the concept and just going at it.
Yeah, you always just got to go. Just start.
So obviously you came today with some thoughts around failure, around fallacies. Is there any specific moments where you just went and it didn't work that you want to touch on? It was just a complete faceplant?
I think I want to start with a big comment here that sales is literally a career of failure. And I don't know that a lot of people look at it that way. All right. Again, if you look at the data, how often do we actually win Right?
Yeah.
That is beyond a failing grade.
Yes.
Like that's not even close to an F.
Yeah. We're not
Right?
even
Like-
we're not even good batting averages, you
Yeah,
know?
like if we're good, we get like 20%, right?
Yep.
25% from, top of funnel to a client. And so like you just have to like digest that for a second, going like, okay, so 75% of the time I'm going to fail at my job for a living. Like that's my job, right? And so like that's I think a big mental like reset that a lot of salespeople need to do is because they guess what, just like you said, they always get wrapped up in the they closed this huge deal, or look how much commission we can make, or look at these big incentives, and like we're always focused on that like top 1% seller that I've been doing this long enough. That's usually a coincidence of timing and effort and a good year, right? Because show me 5 in a row. And we get wrapped up in that, not realizing that like most of what we do is failure. And like, so like be totally cool with that. Like it doesn't faze me at all. And, I heard you on a previous episode, you were talking about a big sale that you lost and you were so mad when you went to the car, and like, I don't get mad at those at all anymore. Right. I'd leave that meeting like, all right, whatever. We got 5 more this week we got to get. Didn't you know we were going to lose like 75% of these? Like, come on, you should know that when we went in here. No big deal. On to the next one.
Right.
The key is always just having enough of them, right? If you have enough of them, losing one doesn't matter. So, and I always like start with the mental level set that like sales is failure. But oftentimes we look at sales as success, as the big commission checks, as the huge sale, as like the quota trip, and I'm going to Costa Rica and all expenses paid. And it's like, yeah, that is the pinnacle. Like that is the success. But
That's
they
not the
failed
norm.
a lot to get there,
Right.
right? Like a lot. If you look at their actual results, they probably failed 70, 80% of the time that year to get there. So that has always been interesting to me about sales, and I've always never gotten emotionally attached to any opportunity or any customer or anything like that. And so I always coach to salespeople like never be afraid to lose a deal. Just it's okay. Go in there. Try to lose it. See what happens.
Do you think most sales leaders have that mentality, though? I feel like most aren't pitching to you, hey, 80% of the year is going to be a failure for you to get to the quota trip. Like, you'll still get there.
I don't think it's a very common opinion,
Yeah.
or it's not very motivating.
Right. But isn't it at the same time, because you remove the over emotional peaks and valleys and you more level set of, yeah, you're still going to feel it a little bit because you're going to have the big sale you wanted that didn't go through. But as you said, I think they're more dramatic because people don't have the back end funnel to support. Also, like, well, that was my deal for the year. And you're like, what do you mean that was? Like, you should have other ones. They're like, well, no. You're like, well.
Yeah, right. And so that's all part of the learning process. But no, I don't really think it's that common, because I mean, it can break people down. People need different motivators, right? Not everyone is as crude or brash or direct as I am. So like, I just like it raw. Like, just tell me I'm going to get punched in the face and we'll deal with it, right? So obviously, like, you've got to change that approach with different people, and you've got to learn what motivates them differently. But that's just a fact. And so that's something that you got to check yourself at the door. If you can't accept that, then it's probably not the role for you.
Yes. And that's why I think it's unfair that more aren't. Yeah, you got to handle everyone differently, but at some point you just have to say face value what they're getting into. And I don't think enough people do. And I've had plenty of moments in my career where you pull the sales rep in the room and you have the conversation where they leave and they probably go cry somewhere, but you're like, you're not doing it. Like, it's not a bright future if you don't change. And some people are like, well, it's sad they cried. I'm like, every rep that ever cried for me ended up hitting quota that year, came back, and were super happy. And they weren't crying because someone was mean. They were crying because someone held up the mirror the first time in their life and were like, hey, this isn't looking good. You know it. I know it. Here's what needs to be done to get there.
Yeah, and I think, if you grew up playing sports, right, in any kind of competitive fashion, like, every game has a winner and loser, right? Like, I don't know how we forgot that, but like, even the point of playing a game is so someone wins and someone loses, or it wouldn't be a game. You'd just be like standing around. So, growing up playing sports a lot and really like wanting to win every game that I play, right? You get that competitive nature, but you have to like accept the reality. You're not going to win every game you play. So, you win or you learn, right? And that's just a great mentality. I hear a lot of MMA coaches talk about that. You either win or you learn, right? And that's definitely something I've adopted, that when you lose, what can you take from it? How do you win the next one? And just accept it.
So I've actually never heard when you either win or you learn. I mean, that's the way I look at it. If it went good, still you can learn from it. But if it went bad, you can learn more. So once you set that foundation, we're getting into the failure space. What's next for you? As we go deeper into that failure space in your life?
Well, so yeah, maybe let's just talk about some failures.
Yeah.
Let's get some out on the table. Let's see. Here's a fun one. So I moved to Minnesota from Florida. It's been about 14 years. I'll never forget like one of my first sales calls. I am going to Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Okay, and I'm new in town. I don't know what that means. I don't know where that is. I moved to the Twin Cities, and I was working in Miami for a while before this. So I am in like a shiny silver suit, bright lime green shirt, bright like yellow and green tie. And I get in the car, I grab my sales engineer, and we're going on this, 4-hour drive or whatever it is. And I had no clue that I really should have wore a plaid shirt, some boots, jeans. Like, when I met these people, they were like, who is this guy that you brought? Like, they couldn't even listen to me. It didn't matter what I had to say. I was like, who is this moron who showed up dressed to this? Okay, so the meeting didn't go great. Like, they didn't even engage. It didn't get much from that. And then we get hit with like a full-on blizzard on the way back, which I have also never experienced or driven in or anything. So I'm in like my nice shoes and like I have nothing to scrape the car. It was like a full-blown disaster. And I was like, learning lesson there is I probably should have done some research on like where I was going, talk to some people about like, hey, what's the dress attire? What are these people like? I was way out, like obviously complete fail. We went nowhere with that sale. So that was a good lesson on like doing some research before just being headstrong and just running it. Like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I know how to sell this stuff. Been selling it forever. I'm the greatest. And that was like, that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. So context, audience, if you're what you would wear to go out and party in Miami, right? And you wear that exact same outfit for a dive bar in Montana, all right? I mean, people are going to look at you like you just grew 3 heads.
Yes.
And you're clearly lost.
Yes.
So,
you
that
do not
would
belong here.
Yeah, they're like, you can just go home now, or
it's like I'm just gonna turn around and drive 4 hours back. That was a really effective 8-hour day. So yeah, that was fun, but more in like a general like a business context, right? Kind of taking, some of my epic failures have been like sales incentives and spiffs, where I thought I had the golden goose. I was like, this is going to motivate reps. This is going to knock it out of the park. We're going to sell so much of this product. They'd be fools not to take advantage of this incentive. And so, that comes with financial responsibility. You have to like map out your salary expense or your commission expense and like how that fits into the budget and all that and make all these predictions, which means like you basically have to document how great of an idea is this?
Right.
I think it's $100,000 worth of good idea. And then you do it and like literally nothing, right? Like no one sold any of them. I've had them where like we got 0 results. And the audience doesn't really know how much selling for me went into creating this incentive and this flyer and this, tiering structure and all of that to then just have it completely flop. And that happened at least a couple times, right? Of course, there's the flip side of ones that were wildly successful, but that happened a couple times, right? And I know that you want to pivot to like, well, did I learn anything from that? Right? Sorry for taking it out of your mouth there, but no, go ahead and ask it, and then we'll get into it.
I don't want to ask it now.
I think the learning from that was things that motivate me or things that I think will be successful do not unilaterally apply to the general public. Maybe even less so percentage-wise than what I thought, meaning I found that I'm more of a minority in my thought process. So I have to then like create something that I don't really connect with, but everyone else does. So that's the better idea. And that's hard to wrap your head around sometimes. Like I would never do it that way, but all of you would, so therefore it's better.
Right. It's interesting. I'm reading this book right now, and they talk about this concept where we don't take enough time. Let me back up. We take too much time thinking we're unique and our way is better because we are unique and we're not the norm. So this is the way it should be done. And the author actually says, in their opinion, then we're just wrong, and we need to actually fix our thinking to fit said audience's thinking, right? And he goes, so instead of thinking you're special or you're this big deal or your idea is the best, you should actually be going, well, my big idea is the idea that drives the most people forward or aligns with the best picture. And I feel like I've been in plenty of spots in my career where it's like, I have this idea, it's amazing, right? And you're like, you get in the room and everyone looks at you like it's not. How do you balance the pushing the norm? Because there are situations you need to push back. And then there's situations where, no, you definitely are just wrong. And only self-reflection gets you there. But any tips for younger people still moving up in business? How do I
like if you have to
balance that?
reiterate it more than 3 times, you're probably wrong. if you have to keep going, no, you don't understand. Let me tell you how this thing's supposed to work. Like, you're probably wrong. You're probably veering off the rails because, like, if they don't understand by the 3rd time, it's probably a bad idea. Or it's not clear, or they're not getting it. So you failed. Like, you're wrong. If you can say it one time and everybody gets it, then it's probably right? Because you've got mass adoption on the first swing. So, like, don't belabor yourself to go in deeper than that. Like, you got it. You won. It's, if the client says yes in a sales call, like, just stop talking. Just take the order. There's nothing else to add. We're done. We made it to the finish line, right? And so that same concept of, like, you got to keep pitching it over and over again, or keep reframing it, or maybe you just don't understand. It's a really good idea, but you don't understand it. I think there's a lot of truth to what that book's telling you. Is like, you're probably wrong, and you don't want to accept that the way to get this done isn't the way you would do it. And I've definitely had that reflection point in my own career numerous times where I get it. It should work this way, but maybe I'm over analytical or very mathematical about it, and it's too rigid, and it just doesn't work at scale. So, and sometimes you have this barrier where you feel like, God, why do I have to dumb it down, right, for everyone to get it? But, like, what's your goal? Are you trying to just get, like, the top 5 to get it, or are you trying to get everyone to adopt it? Well, if you want everyone to adopt it, you got to dumb it down. I mean, that's just the fact.
Yeah, it's the question of, like, are you doing it because you want to be prideful and go, look at this cool idea? Yes. Oh, weak.
Yeah.
Such a soft one. But yeah, it's the question of, like, am I doing it because I'm prideful and be like, look at this amazing idea I came up with? Or do I want to do it because 6 months later they go, hey, we actually got a whole new set of revenue, new clients, we grew, and the whole team gets credit, not just you. And I think we all get caught up in that. It's like, well, I thought of the unique idea. You didn't. It's like, yeah, but your unique idea didn't work, so I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had it on, that's one side of it, but also, like, on product offerings, right? Like, I've done product development for quite some time, and it's remarkable how much effort went into assuming what people wanted or knowing what people, like, I know, I've been doing this for a long time. I know what they want to buy. I know how they want to consume it. And failure point there was devoid of data or not actually talking to my customers and then making a product going, you're going to love this thing. I mean, I know I didn't ask you what you actually wanted, but you are going to love this thing. That is a whole nother failure point that, went headstrong and created a lot of time and effort into launching, like, a whole new product offering, only to have it pulled off the shelf 3-4 months later. Right. And I was mad at that time for sure. Like, I still was adamant that it should have been that way. But, I can now look back and look at history and go, no, they did just fine without that. And maybe better because there was only one option,
Right.
Not everybody needs 5 options.
Yeah, well, it's even the age-old story of whether you want to talk about the grill or the vacuum, but if we go on the vacuum, they made a silent vacuum, and no one would buy it because if there wasn't noise, they didn't believe it was working, right? And simply just ask your customers. They'd be like, nah, I'm good. Saved a lot of money in the research and department there. But question for you, because I feel like you aren't a person, I could be wrong, that gets caught up in fallacies easily or trying the latest thing to be more successful in a different area. Have you ever been swept up in a fallacy when you were younger of,
Yeah.
this, do that, hustle this
You know,
way.
that was an interesting one. So like, you know, you mentioned like Instagram Reels, and it's like I've never even looked at Instagram.
Okay.
So
We're gonna work on that, folks. We're gonna help them.
I mean, honestly, I don't see the point. And so I know that might sound weird, but like, why? To just see like a reel of a bunch of pictures and videos? Like, I mean, for real, I just boil it down to like, there's like 7 other apps that already did that, and we just keep recreating them under new names, and like literally all they are is pictures and videos and comments. How many times can we spin that thing and call it something new? So it's like, to me, I just like, it's a little weird to me, the social media obsession. But so like that's where at some point I'm just like, I just don't want another login to another app. I just don't need to do this. And I guess Facebook will show it to me anyways. But no, I you know, I have actually meaningfully tried to like engage in whether they're different sales books or sales methodologies. I've been through numerous like corporate sales trainings or like structured sales trainings that are teaching you their way, teaching you their method. And you had a previous guest with the shopping cart ideology. Love that. That's totally how I vibe on that. I've gone through all of them. I've gone through, and it's always like 3 or 4 things that resonate with me. Going like, all right, I'm gonna pick that up, and that might be like a lifelong sales trait. But like, I just sat through like a 2-day conference and got like 3 bullet points that I might adopt, and I never really like subscribed to whether they're fads or you know, people they join these movements and go like, this is the way we have to do it, this is the way sales is done in 2024, right? There's a good one, right? At the pace at which everything moves now, this one's really interesting when we talk about like the digital transformation of sales. And I remember 5 years ago, like I was adamant, we need to automate prospecting, and we need to record all our calls, and we need to get all this data, and we need to, you know, just hyper velocity on everything. Like we could automate all of this. And that was adopted so quickly that it's like completely ineffective now. Like literally its life cycle almost killed itself in like just 5 years. And then you kind of like step back and go, hold on, people have like been selling stuff for like hundreds and hundreds of years without this. Let's go back to some of the grassroots. So like, I don't know if that was like a fad or whatnot, but like there's still companies struggling to adopt that. They haven't even gotten in the game yet, and the game's like already over. Maybe it's not over, but percentage wise, it's pretty rough. Like percentage of people that actually answer the phone now or answer a cold email, extremely low. And every company has an automation machine gun blasting them with marketing and emails and texts and all of that. So, I don't know. I always kind of just watch, listen, but adopt very little. And none of it's really changed my course on the fundamentals of just like hard work, being genuine, putting in the extra effort. A lot of them are just classic sales cliches, right? Like make the extra 10 phone calls at 5 p.m. Just because percentage-wise, most people aren't. Like no one else is gonna.
Right. I think what's interesting that you're touching on, and I get into spirited conversations with the trending leaders in the go-to-market and sales space, is a lot of them are on these AI tools and all these trends, right? And my argument that I always tell people is I was like, hey, business is the same today as 100 years ago. It's just with new tools. And I said, if anything, at some point, if you go against the tools, then you grow. And I said, a perfect example, everyone thought brick and mortar was dead. Do you know who doubled down on brick and mortar and then actually dominated in the digital space? And they're like, well, who? I was like, well, Target doubled down, modernized their brick and mortar locations. And then when COVID happened and you had to do online shopping and in-store pickup, who was set up to do it the quickest and most efficient with the best product? Target. And so I love what you're hitting on. It's like, hey, it's getting so automated. And this is where my head is right now. I'm like, the go-to-market sales space is so automated that not this scripted handwriting companies or everybody, handwritten thank you card, a shake of the hand.
Can handwrite a note for you. It's like, well, that's not a handwritten note then.
It's like actually old school is going to become new school again, just like everyone's wearing, the 80s clothes today.
I love that you're saying this. So I'm going to like touch on like secret sauce, not secret at all. One of the things I just push out to my sales team is like, let's just go back to door knocking. and
Seriously,
walking into businesses and cold calling. No one else is doing it. No one showed up there for 4 or 5 years. And then, okay, give me the rebuttal. Yeah, but no one's going to be there because everyone works from home. But do you know who's probably there?
Someone who wants to have a conversation.
The decision makers are probably there.
Right. And they probably want to see people, right?
You just removed like all of the gatekeepers out of the way because they're all working from home. So like, let's go try it. Let's just go walk in. I met your neighbor, literally. There's my car. So I walked over here to talk to you. Then, add in like, I'm in cybersecurity, man. Like the amount of fraud and the amount of deception and social engineering, like, wouldn't you want to actually see me to confirm it's me? I really think there's going to be some level of personal biometric authentication in sales in the next 3-5 years.
Yeah, especially with all of the deep fakes that are so easy to do now. I mean, the turnaround has been insane. But one thing I want to push back on you on a little bit is you talked about, hey, I don't do Instagram. I don't do any of this, the kind of those reels because they repeat themselves. And I used to be, and still am at Dell. I was the guy who's like, I'm not in the pop culture space. I don't know. I didn't have a TikTok. I didn't know all these things, right? And slowly over time, I was like, but am I just alienating myself and making myself age faster or removing myself from the market of people I work with, where I need to learn a balance of, hey, I need to be involved with it to a point to use the tool rather than just completely remove myself from it. And I started feeling like, hey, Devin, that was a pretty ignorant move to go, nah, screw all of this. And I actually need to go, nope, I need some of it so I can flow.
Super valuable point and something I struggle with big time, right? Like the latest movement is content-led sales.
Yes.
Right? Is influencer-driven sales that we're going to take over from Instagram influencers that sell, commercial products, and it's going to work on the B2B market. Right. That's
just got a debate on Instagram or on LinkedIn today with a guy about it.
That's the push, right? I've heard it. I've been pitched to. I get it. Like deep down, a big part of me is like, God, I just can't do this. Like, I don't want to make videos all day talking about sales stuff just so I can get a bunch of views. So then hopefully someone contacts me about a real sales lead one day, right? I mean, that's the strategy.
Yes.
Sorry to boil it down so rudely, but
that is it. It's reality.
Yeah. That is the strategy, is don't cold call them. They'll contact you wanting to buy your stuff because you got a bunch of videos and you're credible, right? Or do I, or did I have AI make a bunch of videos with cartoons? Yeah, cool. I'm really credible.
Yeah, so now we're back to the YouTube cartoon era that taught you about a product.
Yeah, it's I mean, maybe I'm willing to be vulnerable and say I'm probably wrong, right? There's going to be a good movement there that is maybe where people connect. And timing's everything, right? But are those the buyers right now? Not really. No, the decision makers haven't aged out yet to where they're watching YouTube all day and that's where they're deciding where they're buying. It's still very grassroots, right? It's still, I got a referral from Devin. He trusts you, so I'll talk to you. Can you come to my office and meet me in person? Show me you're a real person and transact. And like, I'm totally open for someone to prove me wrong and show me how they've made millions of sales in IT and cybersecurity otherwise. And there probably is someone that maybe we'll find them and they can ping us and we can make something of that. I'm into it. But I struggle with that. But I also want to challenge myself to like not become an old dog and not evolve with sales and not become the crotchety old sales leader that doesn't try new things. So like I'm conflicted, and you're going to see me put out some crappy content this year of me trying and being a little more vulnerable and saying stuff like, I don't think I need to tell people on video all day things about what I do or how it could be better. But if that's the way, because cold outreach is really tough. So I got to try something else. I got to find a way to draw them in. So I'd be a fool not to consider that as a different methodology.
Right. Yeah, it's all in my head this conversation I was having with someone. I said, hey, what do they call it? SME-led sales, right? Subject matter experts that you pay money to that push out content, and then the C-suite also needs to push out content.
Yes.
And I said, hey, I get all of that, and there's a point, but I said, in the end, nothing will ever trump or grow you faster than word of mouth. I said, nothing will. Then a customer telling someone else, I actually like Emmett, he's a really good guy, you should buy from him, Matt. And he's like, and he disagreed with me. And maybe this isn't the best example, but I simply I was like, Stanley Cup. That they didn't push out all this great content. They literally reinvented a product that already existed, got into a few good people's hands that liked it at a better price point, and word of mouth blew it up. That was it. And so I go, hey, just like word of mouth killed it because you started promoting too much
it's so
money.
funny, right? Like, so I look at it and I'm like, all right, let me look into what is going on with this thing. I'm like, people are fighting over like a thermos cup?
Yeah.
This is the whole thing? Have we, like, really? Do people care about this? I was just dumbfounded with that. I looked into it to be like, what is this craze about? And I'm like, really? Like, they're just buying a cup. Like, these have existed for a long time. I don't understand.
It became a status symbol thing more than anything. I think the exclusivity and whatnot, and how people get about oh, well, I have the 1 of 10 Ferrari, but my Bugatti's 1 of 5.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people got a little bit nuts. Don't want to miss out. Gotta show that I got the limited edition crazy new Starbucks collab with the extra stickers
I
or
guess,
whatever.
but
the
like,
case
who are
is.
you showing it to? I thought you worked at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's exhausting to keep up with. But before I definitely touch on some really important things. And before we really stick the audience, I'm assuming you have a really good challenge knowing you for the audience. Before we get there, another failure or fallacy that you really wanted to touch on that we haven't hit yet today.
Maybe controversial, but there's a long time, saying that people do business with people they like.
Okay.
Right. And that's the one I'm going to challenge. So much so that we have convinced people that like we have to be friends to transact money. And that's just simply not true. Like, I am not friends with most of my customers. Sorry. But like, I'm not. I don't develop personal relationships with them. I'm there to do a job. They're paying me to do a job. If we do a good job, they will do more of those jobs, right? And if I can prove out that we're the most qualified person, they'll do business with us. And I've always believed in that more than relationships. And that was really transformative for me when I changed markets. Going from an East Coast, South Florida market to a Midwest market is very different buying criteria, very different business behaviors, right? And I remember in like my first, couple years, I was very challenged with partners going, God, like people here do business to a fault, like on relationship to a fault, I should say. And I'm going, that's definitely not the right solution for them, or that's definitely not going to fix their problem, but like it's their buddy and they've known him since college. And so like, I'm only going to buy from him because like, that's the way this goes. I trust him. And it's like, man, that one challenged me for a little, cause like, I didn't have any friends. I moved from a different market. So like, I don't have any relationships. I didn't have a bunch of people that I was networked with or anything. So like, I had to just sell on my own merit and sell on my own knowledge. And so when someone challenged me back on like, well, that's not true. I'm like, no, like I literally did it. I had no connections, no friends, no relationships. It was a brand new market and I had to sell purely on actually knowing what I'm doing and delivering. And I truly believe that's ultimately what the customer wants. It's just much harder to prove that in a sales process than it is to get a warm lead and walk in and go, trust them, they'll do a good job.
Right. It's interesting you touch on it because my biggest struggle in sales my entire career until probably 5 years in was everyone's like, hey, you got to ask about the baseball and you got to do this and you got to become their friend.
The first 5-10 minutes of meeting to break it open, look across their desk, find something to break the ice.
And I was like, that's not me. And people are like, well, it needs to be. I'm like, no, I just want to solve their problem. Like, I want to go in and go, hey, Matt, don't care if what you like about life. If you have a problem, let's fix it. Granted, you got to be friendlier. And I would do that part. But I was like, I don't care. And people could tell I didn't care, but I would try and care. And I finally hit a point where I was like, no, if I solve your problem, you're gonna like me because I solved your problem. You're not going to be friends. And it was interesting, actually, when I interviewed at Hormel, they asked that question. They said, hey, in this era, and it took me 5 years later to connect what they were asking, of course. They said, hey, in this era. The ginger water is great.
Ginger, that's what it is.
They go, let's say Matt, he's 10 years into sales and he's landing all these clients and he's your competitor because he's taking them to Twins games and all these sporting events and they're going out for beers and we give you tickets and they don't like you, but you want to land the sale. They go, how do you use those tickets to land the sale? So I don't know, I give them to them and say, take your friends, but let's still talk about business another time. And they're like, hey, cool. And the guy's like, you're hired. At the end of a 4-hour-long interview, I was like, what? And of course, 5 years later, I finally understood that like it wasn't about being liked. It's you understood how to use your assets around you to at least get them to have the conversation so you could earn the respect. And I just had that conversation with someone on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that
value.
That absolutely resonates with me. Like I usually am not the one that attends, but I'm more than happy to provide that for others, right? I'm going to attend things that interest me, and maybe if we have a real connection there, we'll talk about it, right? If we're doing a bourbon tasting, like, yeah, I'm into it, right? Or we're going to race cars or something like that, I'm into those events for sure. But like, and I always struggle with that. Like, oh man, how about the Wild last night? I'm like, I don't know. Don't ask me. Just don't look at me. I know nothing about this. I don't know the scores. I don't know any of the players.
Yeah, I just don't know, right? You're like, well, and that's just people need to get their mindset away from that and realize they don't care. Just provide the value, solve the problem, move on. And I always tell people it's a lot more fun to enjoy a cocktail with someone you've closed the deal with than someone you're trying to close the deal with. Because there's stress on the table versus it's already done. Let's just get to know each other. The ink's on paper. It's over. But
yeah, and obviously, like, through those various sales trainings, right? Many of them were about reading personalities and how to accommodate those personalities in the sales process. And like, there is absolute discernible value in that. So like, I guess the moral of the story is like, don't be an idiot, right? Like, be polite, be nice, accommodate their needs, deliver it in the way they need it. But we don't have to be like friends. We don't have to hang out outside of work. We don't have to go to, you just got to gain some respect and be competent and confident in what you're delivering, and just make sure that's paramount in what you do in your sales engagement.
So someone listening right now, Matt, what's the one piece of information or challenge they should take away today?
So even, I've heard your previous guests a lot talk about like, entrepreneurship versus working for a company, and the stability versus instability, or that comfort of working, and I've worked pretty much all corporate jobs, right? And any of the small entrepreneurial things I've done have just not gone anywhere. They've failed. They were quick losses. So, and that's just, maybe I just didn't hit it yet, right? But even in that environment, you have the opportunity to rebuild, right? And so the challenge would be, if you're doing something that you kind of like, but you're not happy, you're not satisfied, or you're not driven to do it every day, you're like going through the motions, you're frustrated, you bring some of that anger home with you, like, don't be afraid to just cut it off and rebuild and start over. Even like rank down a little bit, or try a different role, or go to a company that has way more challenges than your current one, but like, take it on. Go try to rebuild and see if maybe you get a better outcome. Because again, it's just a job. And like, you can get another one. Like, you're not an entrepreneur. You haven't put your whole life savings into it. You didn't like commit your mortgage against it. You didn't, like, you're pretty pot committed when you go that route. And I think people think they're way more committed to a corporate job than they are. Like, it's a paycheck. You can get one from another brand, another logo, if you're okay with that lifestyle and that's the way you want to go about it. So like, don't be afraid to go rebuild, right? And see if you can get a better outcome. And like, I obviously personally did that because I wanted the challenge. There actually was nothing wrong where it was. I just wanted to rebuild and see if I were to change some of the scenario, change some of the circumstances, can I get the same outcome? Can I get the same success, the same growth? And then I can really stand alone and go like, okay, that was me, right? And that's why I challenged it. I knew where we were at before had been built for 50 years. There's a lot of people that contributed to that success. So I couldn't really look at it and go like, I did that. Yeah, there's little things, right? But like, I didn't make that as successful as it was. And they're still successful, and they're going to be successful, right? So it was like, I got to pull back and get a little smaller and like really challenge myself. So like, you can still take on that kind of magnitude of challenge in a corporate world without having to go full entrepreneur, right? And so I guess that's my viewpoint, and because like, that's the seat I'm sitting in. And so that would be the challenge. It's like, it's okay to step back and rebuild.
I like it because I think a fallacy that people will look back in 5 years and see is this entrepreneur fallacy that everyone can do it and everyone should do it, and it's all this rah-rah. It's like, no, there's a reason for decades and generations. It's been a small percentage of people actually start businesses, and actually even smaller percent are successful because very few are built to do it. And there's plenty of joy and freedom inside of big-ish corporations, right? I would argue, if you're in a Fortune 500, you're probably not going to have it. But I would say best example, I still yearn to find a way to recreate what I did have when I was at Marco, where I was building a team and I got to hire all my own people. It was literally, you felt like you're an entrepreneur, right? They call it an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And so I can't wait for people to realize this entrepreneurship thing's a fallacy, and you really can build it anywhere. Just build it where you have the most fun within context, right?
Yeah, and having a lot of resources is really cool. Too,
It's a lot of,
right?
I mean, I'll never forget when I went in, they're like, hey, start this division. I was like, I need a $500,000 check. I know you already spent a ton. And they're like, okay. And I was like, that's great. Thanks. So, well, I appreciate you hopping on and joining the podcast and riffing on some different failures and
Thanks for
experiences.
having me.
So, awesome.
There's, you mentioned also on another episode, like how some people were not willing to come in and share failures. And like, I love it.
Yeah.
Like, again, because I'm so at peace with everything I do as a failure already that like, sure, let's talk about 6 sales calls last week that went awful, right? I don't understand the fear of that. There's numerous things that you do that just aren't going to work out. Like, I don't win every game I've ever played. I haven't won every single championship of every single league. Like, come on. What are we expecting here? Like, it's okay.
Right.
Just have fun while you're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I'd say for the audience, and we can cut this out if you don't agree with it, but you'll see it's Matt Kanaskie. You'll find his name. Definitely go find him on LinkedIn if you're in the sales space and you want advice or you're seeking opportunity for growth, just because he can't help all of you. But when he does have time, I know I've learned a lot more and was given a lot more rope to learn sitting in a room with him than many leaders. So I would say definitely reach out to him.
I would absolutely welcome that, and I can learn from you too, right? You can teach the old dog new tricks, and I want to hear the new challenging thing. Like, I love challengers. I tell that to all my employees. Like, if you're not pushing me to the point where I'm like actually getting pissed off at you, you're not trying hard enough, right? And like, I like that. I mean, you really care. You care enough to challenge me, so I'm open for it.
Love it. So that's the one challenge I'm going to leave with you. If you're not pushing back inside of your corporation in a healthy way, think about what you could be bringing to the table outside of just doing your job.
Took quite a fall, didn't we, Master Bruce?
Why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up.